Welcome on into a special presentation here on STL Sports Central. All content brought to you by DraftKings. The crown is yours as we are going through the best of the best to wear every single jersey number in St. Louis sports history. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Randy Karraker for the 40s. We are nearing the halfway point, Randy. People are mad at us online for some of the numbers that we have picked here recently. They're getting involved in the conversation on it, and we love that. And we are going to continue asking you for your help. And along the way, Randy, we have to stop and take a break and kind of lay out some of the credentials and some of the careers that these players had when you get to some of those numbers that are a little more difficult. And that's where we are today with number 44.
Oh, man. And you know what? It's amazing, Joe, how we could look at 44 and Trevor Rosenthal set the Cardinals all-time save record wearing number 44 back in 2017 when he had the 48 saves. He was absolutely remarkable. Obviously, the Blues they had Chris Pronger, but they had some other guys. Jason Arnott had a really good year for the Blues wearing number 44. And we had a couple of football 44s as well, but it seems like a two-man race.
It really does. Two guys that are still actually here in St. Louis, two guys that played at the same time. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to see, and maybe later on in this episode, you'll see quotes, you'll see videos from the two of them. Today comes down to a great hockey player and a great baseball player. Chris Pronger and Jason Isringhausen both wore the double fours.
And Jason Isringhausen came to the Cardinals in 2001. They desperately needed a closer. He had a couple of great years with Oakland, obviously from St. Louis. He gave the Cardinals a hometown discount to come here and did exactly what he was paid to do. He set the Cardinals all-time save record. He was the closer for the 2004 team that was the best team in Cardinal history, winning 105 games, and did his job. His job was to get the 27th out, and he did it better than any other Cardinal has done it in terms of the raw numbers with all of those saves. And he handled the closer job with such dignity because, Joe, it's really hard. And the best closers are the guys that are even keel. Well, he not only handled not saving games in an even keel manner, but his family got basically just ripped into at games when he wouldn't set the opposition down in order. And I think he handled himself on and off the field really well as a member of the Cardinals.
Right. And you look at some of the added pressure that he had in being the hometown boy, being from the Illinois side, the Brighton, the Southwestern kid over there. And then, starting his playing career also in that same area in college and then going. I mean, he was, when you look at the start of his career with the Mets, so you remember just how highly touted those Mets were.
He and Paul Wilson and Bill Pulsifer were the young guns. Yeah,
the K, like Generation K. That's right, that's what they were known as before going on to being turned into that closer. And another thing with Izzy too, when you look at the span of his career in St. Louis, comes in 2002, right at the start, right at that cusp of when they started that long run in the 2000s of being great, and then was unhealthy. Wasn't healthy enough to kind of reap in all of this. I mean, he was there in 2006, was on the team in 2006, but wasn't able to throw in that World Series season.
Yeah, he had the bad hip going. But it's interesting when you talk to the guys that were down in that bullpen. Brad Thompson was down there, Wayne was down there, some of the other guys. They give Jason Isringhausen so much credit for being so selfless because he basically told them how to handle pressure situations. Adam Wainwright will tell you to this day, he told me just go out there, and if something's going wrong and things are speeding up on you, just breathe. And it's something that you kind of have to remember to do when you're in the postseason. But Izzy, in addition to being so great on the field, was a great leader for those young players off the field.
And something he still does today with the Cardinal organization, kind of a roving consultant jumping around to all of the different minor leagues, being a part of all of the young arms, and something that he really enjoys doing too, going around to all the different minor league camps as the season goes on.
And teaching as much the mental aspect of things as the physical. And he's an important part of the Cardinal organization and an important part of the community. Like you said, still here and doing great things in St. Louis.
And then from that, you have to compare his career and all of the great accolades and everything that great that we just said about Izzy, a guy that we love, with a guy that played in pretty much, the same time period too in St. Louis. They were crossing paths. In St. Louis for 3 years at the same time. In the Blues, Chris Pronger here from playing from 93 to 2011, a NHL, a hockey Hall of Famer. One of the Klebs has said that Chris Pronger is the best physical or best skilled Blues player that he has ever seen in his life.
I think if you're rational about it, and we might not be here in St. Louis, but I think if you're a rational hockey observer and you name the top 5 defensemen in the history of the National Hockey League, I think it'll be really hard to not have Chris Pronger on that list. He was that good. There have only been 2 defensemen that won the Hart Trophy as the MVP, and he was one of them. Yep. The other was Bobby Orr. He was just dominant, and he was able to play defense almost by himself. And he literally did. Back in the day when the NHL overtime was 4-on-4, most teams would put 2 defensemen and 2 forwards on the ice. Joel Quenneville would put Pronger back on the blue line and then have 3 forwards because Pronger could handle his own end of the ice by himself.
And that during a time too. How many years straight did the Blues go to the playoffs? That was like over 25 years, right?
Until his last year here. Well, no, every year he was here, they went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
From 95. He came here for the 95-96 season, and he stayed here until 04-05. So every one of those years, he was in the playoffs,
right?
For a decade.
Yeah. And even though they didn't have the success there, never raised the cup during his time, you still look at the legacy that he left behind with that too, of being the dominant defenseman that he was.
And it didn't happen here. And obviously one of the reasons that they didn't win was because of their goaltending. But he gets traded to Edmonton. They go to the finals. Edmonton trades him to Anaheim. They go to the finals. Anaheim trades him to Philadelphia. They go to the finals. He was the linchpin for those 3 franchises, especially when you look at what happened after he left. When you look at what happened with the Oilers after he left, the Ducks after he left, the Flyers after he left, his departure kind of devastated the franchise. And because he was such a dominant performer, he literally lifted teams up to the Stanley Cup. Didn't get a chance to do that here, but he was as good. Well, he was a better player here than he was in any of those other places.
And injuries cut both careers short. It's where they could have been, but Pronger's still a Hall of Famer in his own right. You wonder the injuries, how many saves that might have cost Izzy in the long run. And if that number would have been higher, he finished his career with 300, but if he gets to 350, like if he gets to 350, what does that do for his overall legacy?
And if he's around, if he records the final out in 2006, rather than Adam Wainwright, and that number 44 is seen nationally by all those baseball writers who vote on the Hall of Fame, maybe they do vote for Jason Isringhausen for the Hall of Fame. But fact of the matter is, he wasn't able to do that because he was hurt. And Chris Pronger, before his injuries, and he had to retire early because of concussions. He had hockey in him when he retired too. Chris Pronger did. But it's hard to argue against Chris Pronger. Jason Isringhausen, the Cardinals' best closer ever, right? Numerically speaking, he's got the most saves, and he is a Cardinal Hall of Famer. Chris Pronger, the best ever to play his sport as a defensive defenseman, at least one of the half dozen best to ever play his sport. And obviously being a national Hall of Famer, he, to me, is the guy that I have to choose.
If the 2 of them were right here, do you think what do you think those 2 would say about each other?
I think that number 1, they'd be very appreciative of the fierce competitiveness that each other showed, because Pronger, remember, his heart stopped in a playoff game in Detroit. He was back for the next game. He played with bad knees. He played all beat up, and obviously Izzy did the same thing. I think that'd be probably the one aspect of each other's game that they would appreciate the most is the competitiveness, because competitors love other competitors. But I also don't think that Izzy would be that. Well, Izzy is just such a humble guy. I don't think that he would be at all bothered by Chris Pronger being regarded as our number 44.
No camera phones around in the early 2000s when they played here in St. Louis at the same time. You got to wonder if the two of them have stories to not share.
Yeah, and there are a lot of young Cardinal players from that time who give Jason Isringhausen a lot of credit for teaching them how to be a pro.
Yeah.
And that includes out on the road, how to be a real pro on the road.
This is a tough one. We're leaving it. We're throwing it out to you guys now in the chat and throughout all the social medias. Chris Pronger, Jason Isringhausen, let us know your thoughts on who is the greatest to wear the number 44 in the history of St. Louis sports, as we hand things over to you on our quest to name all of the top jerseys, players to wear every jersey 0 through 99 this summer here on STL Sports Central.